No. Come on, where is it?
Dave, it's your Idaho Central app here. Any chance you're missing a debit card? Let's get that taken care of for you. With ICCU's card control, you can turn any card off with the tap of your finger.
You've got it.
And back on again. Out, 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 out. The closest Idaho Central Credit Union branch is in your pocket.
Howdy.
Dude, let's go.
This is Bronco Nation News Live. The best interviews, the most informed opinions, the latest breaking news, all from the top Boise State insiders. Bronco Nation News Live from BroncoNationNews.com is presented by RowPaint.com, the official paint and coatings company of Boise State Athletics. All Bronco Nation news broadcasts come from the Western Collective Studios. Head down to Western Collective's locations in Garden City or downtown Boise to try some of their delicious beers, including the Horseshoe Golden Ale, the first beer to support an NIL collective. Now, here's four-time NSMA Idaho Sports Writer of the Year, BJ Rains, with another edition of Bronco Nation News Live.
Hey, how we doing? Happy Wednesday. It's here at Bronco Nation News Live at BroncoNationNews.com. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on X, and we got our round table here to talk some spring football today. We got Brad Bedell, former NFL lineman, former Boise State, Auburn, other stops, offensive line coach, tight ends coach, different spots on the offensive side. And then we got our man Michael Callahan, former defensive lineman here with the Broncos the last several years. So excited to get the perspective of you wise gentlemen. And as we get to about, 10 days from the spring game or so. So how we doing here?
Good. Getting
Great.
through it, just like they are. Hopefully healthy.
What's week 5 of 6 like during spring ball?
You want to kick yourself in the you-know-what?
It's starting to drag on a little bit at that point.
A little bit? It sucks.
Yeah. It's freaking April. You're 12 practices deep. Your body's starting to feel like you're in the middle of fall camp. So it starts to get a little bit like a grind at that point.
They had spring scrimmage number 1 last Saturday. They'll have spring scrimmage number 2 this Saturday. Brad, from a coach's perspective, how much does spring and these scrimmages and spring ball actually matter in terms of, maybe it depends on the position, depends on the player, if they're a veteran, if they're a freshman, if they've started before. But, I was out of practice yesterday and you're seeing some of these guys, on the sidelines that are out taking a maintenance day or whatever, and you're kind of like, well, you know what? It's mid-April. Like, talk to me in August. Like, who cares right now? Like, how much from a coaching perspective does spring ball actually matter, I guess?
I think it matters I think it goes by player, to be quite honest with you. Mike, you would know. Some players, everybody's going to say, hey, every roster, every spot's open to start. That's just not true sometimes. You want to hone up the skills of your returning guys that have been starting for 2-3 years. You want to get back to the core fundamentals. After coaches a study, if he's going to make technical tweaks to some techniques and some things, You want to solidify that or get a really good grasp of it during spring ball. And then your young guys, you want to see how far they've come along, especially coming out of the redshirt year, about maintaining and thinking and how smart are they? Has their football knowledge grown? And then you really want to see the young guys start to continue to develop the physical play that's going to be needed to play. And that's where it starts. It's also a test time. I mean, like as a player, you've been in the locker room and you guys have put in a certain front or a certain blitz, and you come out of spring and you'll never see it again just because they didn't like it, right? Or, the offense, sometimes when this is actually another good thing. When coaches get together in spring, okay, and let's say the defense is trying this new fire zone blitz. The coach, they'll go to the offense and say, hey, can you run this play, and this play against it? Because we want to see if it'll hold up. And all of a sudden, if you're just like gone, well, you just kind of wasted 20 minutes installing that. Not waste, but you'd rather know now than all of a sudden week one, they think it's really good, and all of a sudden it's given up 400 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So that's the point of it. And then some guys, your Cage Caseys, you want to see them develop and get better, but you also do not want to risk injury or anybody who's coming back from injury. You got to take it slow. They're not kicking the game off. Boise's not playing next week. So now it's like, okay, we just got to get through it.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I feel like we were saying with like, it's like a somewhat of a service kind of an idea how the coaches like go back and forth and script different things they want to see against different looks. You kind of like get caught in the crossfires of that as a player sometimes, like you were saying. There was several instances in my career that a pressure that we thought was freaking awesome was going in during spring. We run it once or twice, get absolutely torched on it, and we never see it again. Or in other instances, we'd have something come in, and next thing you know, we run it, 3 or 4 times a game once we get to the fall. So it's like a cool period for a player to be able to go in and like, go into a practice not knowing if this is going to necessarily be your bread and butter once you get to the season, but seeing if it could be something that you could pull out of your bag in the middle of a game. I also think I think from a player perspective, depending on who's healthy, I think spring ball can be pretty important to building chemistry with certain guys. Just on defense, I've had years that, we've probably had 5 or 6 starters out, and, you're playing with some guys, you'll look to your left and you're like, probably not going to see in a game when we get to the fall. But once you're actually getting around some of the guys that you will be playing with, if you guys manage to make it through the season relatively healthy and get some real good full speed reps, I think there is some importance in being able to develop some chemistry with the guys around you. But at the end of the day, you do want to see the young guys start to take a leap in spring ball, especially the red shirts. You want to see them actually grow in their football knowledge and not look like they're drinking out of a fire hose every time we get into a team rep setting. And you can typically figure out pretty quick within that first spring ball for those red shirts, who's going to be able to make an impact this year and who's going to have to take another year, either on scout team or just continue to develop.
Well, the one thing is also, BJ, is it's also important now. I think spring ball has gotten a little bit more important in regards to the portal, because now this is the first time they've signed some of these kids that are going to go within the portal that they thought were going to fit this need. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now, if that's not going very well, you're in panic mode. You're like, oh, what did we do here? Right. And so that's their first time. Like, we thought he was a smart player. He may be having a tough time grasping the offense. And this is not, that's the one thing you need in within the Boise system, is it takes time for those portal kids. They're going to hear it. By the time they get to camp, they'll hear it for the 4th time. But it's an NFL style offense. The shifts, the motions, the multiple formations. Defensively, the stems from odd to 4 down, show 2, roll to 3, the fire zones, the man beaters, what they did in the red zone, things like that. It's important to get those guys. It's almost an introduction to it. And then summer, and then you'll start seeing them. And then hopefully by practice 1, fall camp, the portal guys are the guy. They are who we thought they were.
What about the other direction where maybe you thought you're okay at a position and you get through spring and you're like, no, we need some more help here at on the D line, or we need some more help. We don't have what we thought we had at receiver, and now with this next portal window opening, you circle the wagons and say, okay, we need to go find ourselves another backup quarterback. We don't feel great about this room, or we don't like. We thought this guy at kicker would be ready to take over for Dalmas, but he doesn't look like he is. I mean, does it go the other way too, where you look to go add here in the next couple of weeks also?
I think you do. I mean, yeah, you do, because so as you're watching and let's say you're a part of the office core, you're Nate Potter, right? And you're going down there and there's a room that it's just not it. Right. We need to add something to it. That's where the recruiting department's so important. While the coaches are getting ready, the recruiting department is scouring there's so many wide receivers loaded in the portal right now. You're not telling me one of those kids in that portal is not 5'11", can run a 4.4. You got to do your due diligence and things like that. But now, if there's a room on the team, the recruiting department is going from full 400 to 50. Right. And then here we go. Then the position coaches are going to get involved. Okay, I like these 5. This is who we're going after. So the coaches aren't going to have to go back at the end of spring and say, okay, we need to evaluate 500 guys. The recruiting department's got to hold their end of the bargain and see, okay, this is our team. And the coaches and recruiting meetings are like, okay, we're going to be interested in this portal round and this, and this. So we need the recruiting department to scour the portal and then figure out who's there, who's not there, and then who possibly will be there. But the recruiting department's not going to do that. I mean, that's not, and I don't think Boise State's not the program that's going to start texting guys, hey, you're going to get in the portal, you can get in the portal. That just doesn't happen. I think Spencer would flip.
Mike, what's the perspective of the players with the portal and all this and just spring ball and how weird this is? And we talked about it last week with a couple of guys entering the portal, but just with the second portal window and getting through spring ball and whether guys are looking to, still getting better offers out there now to leave, or if guys are looking around saying who's coming, who's going, what's the players' perspective?
Yeah, especially this year, it's got to be a little bit of a weird feeling with this portal window, especially if you do identify that they might have to dip into the portal for a position that we need either more depth or we need another impact player, because you're looking at bringing these guys in, essentially on a lease at that point, because you're bringing them in June and you'll have 6 months with this guy. So, and it's worked in the past. Like, we've brought guys in June and they've ended up being, contributors on our team and, great guys to bring into the locker room. But, at the same time, you would hope that you could get these guys in by January, and you'd hope that they'd be able to be who you think you're getting from a portal guy. And, there's been instances that in the spring, they don't look like what we're going for from the portal. And then by the time that we get to game 1, they're on fire and they're ready to go. And it's gone the other way too. We've missed on that too. So just from a player, it's kind of like, all right, like, who's coming in? We got to get them into the system once they get in, and we got to bring them in with open arms, especially with June editions. I feel like you just got to really speed that clock up on getting them integrated with the team, get them comfortable with the defense or the offense. I think it's a little bit easier to bring in a defensive guy in June than an offensive guy, particularly with our NFL style offense. I think 6 months bringing a guy in is a little quick to get somebody ready to go for a full 14 game season, versus on defense. You can try to simplify the terminology and simplify what this guy's job is going to be, and just make sure that he knows it, the most simple form of what he's got to do on a certain play. It also depends on positions. I think for our defense specifically, I think it'd be easier for a guy up front to come in June. I think for a defensive lineman, yes, there is some complex stuff in our defense for the defensive line to figure out, but I think I think the learning curve with that is a little bit less steep than a secondary position or a linebacker spot. I think that those guys, if you bring in a D lineman up front in June, can get it down versus, a back end guy.
Brad, I talked to Mike about this last week. Just already 2 defensive guys. I mean, the portal doesn't open for 2 weeks, Brad. They've already had Andrew Simpson and Braxton Feely say that they're entering the portal here. 2 kind of veteran starters. I asked Stacy Collins, special teams coordinator, obviously doing a good job as linebackers coach as well. And he's been around this game for a long time. I want to play his clip bite from him and get your reaction, Brad, just about the current state of college football.
A lot, I think this is my 27th year doing it, and it's changed a lot, but you got to stay on top of where it has. It's no different than, my background was in education, was going to be a teacher, going into it. It changes, and you got to change with the times. You can like it, not like it. Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter what I think. It's a matter of how can we adjust and adapt to the culture and environment we're in. I think it all started for us in COVID a few years ago, right? You want to talk about the last 5 years of college football, it's been absolutely crazy. The one thing you learn is how do I find a way to try to stay ahead of the curve? How do we try to adapt? How do we try to overcome to put the best product on the field?
Now, you said, Brad, that, Spencer's not exactly the kind of guy that's going to, be tapping into the portal early and reaching out to coaches or players, I guess, and trying to get them to enter the portal and all that. But if you're a Boise State and you've got guys on your roster, Brad, that other people are certainly probably interested in, they've already taken 2. But, is it just that's the way it is? Do you try to call people out? Everyone always says, why do they never name names? Why do they never call people out? And they say, well, because it's everyone doing it. But how does a Boise State in this day and age of college football, guys, and we'll start with you, Brad, kind of battle this portal tampering and fostering of guys and farm system, so to speak, to the big boys here on the rosters?
Well, I'm a firm believer of this. You have built the culture of Boise State. The culture has been set for decades. There is no adapting to crap. You can't adapt to money. And I love Stacy. No, don't get me wrong. I love Stacy. I think he's a hell of a football coach. And what he's done for Boise State before with Andy, and then now, last year, linebackers, I know he had a hiccup in Oregon, but you can't adapt to money. The only thing, what can you adapt to? What is Boise State football built on? It's built on developing people, developing football players, having fantastic relationships with your players, and you're hoping that relationship is going to carry through where the kid will not jump to X amount of dollars. Other than that, the only thing Boise State can adapt to is get the collective to $2.5 to $3 million. If you really want, that's the adaptability of Boise State. Everything else they've done. They've developed people, they've developed character, they've developed football players. Now you got to pay them. And that's the world you live in. So what is there to adapt to? And I don't mean to, I'm not hammering Stacy or anything. This is what kind of fires me up about this is number one, you're not adapting to somebody who's willing to pay a young man $750,000. I'm not saying that those 2 left for that amount of money because I know for a fact they didn't. Okay. So you can't, the only thing to adapt to is get your collective up. Wait to see what this judge is going to do, because we got to figure that out too. If he doesn't accept this settlement and all of a sudden, no, that you guys are $17 million short, you are going to see the downfall of smaller college football. It's done. I think you will see programs just start getting cut. Gone, and gone. So there's nothing to adapt to. You can only adapt to, okay, you're going to take the young man to lunch one more time. You're going to reach out to the parents one more time. Mike, how many parent meetings does Boise State have with your parents? Every spring, every fall, every during the season. Usually coaches are down in the locker room saying hi to the mom and dads before they go up to their hotel room on away games. I made a point to do that, to try to say hello to everybody I can, because I haven't seen the parents in a little bit. But that's the point, is we're not officially in coaching. You're not getting out-coached. You're getting outbid. Right? And these kids that are going to jump into the portal, mainly in this next portal range, but Boise just happened to have 2, right? If one of them has a home, okay, good, go, bye. I hate to tell you this, but you're no longer a part of the program. If the other one jumps in without a deal, without a school, I am a firm believer in this. He tried to set the market for himself. Right? Let's say he thought he was going to get $200,000 and Boise State was paying him $100. I'm just going to do easy math. Okay. All of a sudden he comes out, he's got nothing. And he calls back. He goes, I'd like to come back. We would love to welcome you back. But the problem is you set the market on yourself. So no, we're no longer going to pay you $100. We're now going to pay you $60. You set the market. What's the difference between that and the National Football League? I mean, the running back for the Browns tried to set the market in free agency. Chubb, he didn't sign with anybody. And now the Browns are going to come out and go, wait a minute, you didn't sign with anybody. So we're no longer going to pay you $4 million a year. We're going to pay you $2 million. We're going to save ourselves $2 million. It's just there's no the adaptability is raising money for your collective. That's the only adaptability we have. And then in turn, once the settlement comes out, how much is the school going to be allowed to pay?
Mike, I know in terms of, the bleed blue and the family atmosphere and all this, means so much, I guess, when with some of the money we are throwing around here. And we've heard I think Dirk Cutter came out and said, oh, someone turned down $750,000 for Oregon or whatever. I mean, there's all the rumors and things out there, but from the player perspective, I mean, how I know guys are loyal. I know guys love their teammates, love their family, but I mean, also there's, in some instances, life-changing money being thrown around here. What's kind of the give and take there, you think, from the players' side?
Yeah, I think that this is a tough spot for the players that are committed to staying and that aren't going to jump, because you kind of, like Coach was saying, like the culture and the relationships that are at Boise State have been established and have been around for decades. This isn't some new thing with Boise State, and there are a ton of Boise State guys in that locker room that are, die hard committed to that, won't budge, and, will get frustrated when they see you guys chasing the money. But at the end of the day, the culture and the relationships you build, it goes a long way in building you up as a person. And I truly believe it completely changed me as a young man. But you can't just like rely on the same tactics of, bringing a guy, like he was saying, bringing him out to lunch or like staying around him and trying to have conversations with him. Because once a dude gets in his head and he starts hearing the money that he could make in the portal and whether or not he actually has a deal set up already, or if he's just jumping in because he wants to test the market, once they start getting that idea in their head, the leadership capabilities of the guys in the locker room go out the window, because there's really no talking to those kind of guys because they're already set up in their mind that they want to chase more money than what they're getting here.
Right.
And it's an interesting thought with, hopping in the portal, trying to test it out, doesn't work the way you want it to go, because I don't know what Boise State's thinking with that, but I'd be shocked to see them, let somebody that hopped in come back on the team. I don't know, because very changing landscape, but at least when I was around, I think we had that precedent set that
Didn't Eric McAllister want back on?
From my understanding, I think that he was definitely trying to get back in for a second, and there was some conversations that led to that not happening. And
but there's two things right now. I think the culture of your football program prevents mass exodus.
mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
I mean, Boise State, Boise's just getting a little dusting of this. They've lost 2 kids and the whole fan base went nuts. I mean, and I get it.
I think they're worried because of, like you're saying, that maybe is if those two, once the floodgates open, guys are like, okay, well, if he's not sticking around, maybe it's best for me to look around too.
But and I agree with you, but I think the culture can prevent that, right? You're not seeing 23, 24, 25 kids jump in. There's that's a perfect example of what a culture can help you with. And, the other thing is I think this whole thing is case by case. It's a player by player thing. They're not leaving because they hate the culture, they hate the coaches, they hate all this. That happens. I have an opportunity to go make more money. And so whenever you're starting to get money involved, it changes the landscape of somebody's thought process. And you're going to have one young man who came up with an upbringing of he was going to get whatever he wanted meal-wise. He was going to be able to go and take his girlfriend or whatever. He comes from a stable environment monetarily. Then you have the young men that we recruited that I know have come to Boise State were relying on free lunch for their one meal of the day. Those are the young men that are starters that need to be taken care of the best they can from Boise, and I guarantee they're doing that. But all of a sudden now you get thrown out $500,000, and you can give that to your family or help your family, and your younger brother or younger sister is not relying on free lunch to get one meal of the day. That's where we've lost this of that's NIL. It's not pay to play. And so I am for that. I'm not for now I'm leaving because I can make $300,000 and the outside linebacker is really good. Don't get me wrong. But he hasn't committed anywhere. The D tackle is a different story. I think I know where he's going, and I'm not going to say it. But.
I think we all know.
But that's my point of this whole thing. And you can't, the culture is going to keep the mass exodus from stop happening. Boise State needs to raise more money, go have a horseshoe beer, go get a Jackson's hot dog. If you cannot support it monetarily, support the companies that are going to support the NIL. There's nothing wrong with that. And those little things go a long way. Right. And then you can rely on the people that are donating all this money to go on top of that.
Now, Brad, I know you said you can't adapt to it, whatever, but I know one of Spencer's things is doesn't like promising any money to freshmen, doesn't talk about, if your first conversation with a recruit is about money, he pretty much says, see ya, we don't want you here. Is there, from a recruiting standpoint, whether it be in the portal, whether it be with high school kids, I mean, does the money part of this need to become a bigger part of the conversation here, or?
Well, I think as a recruiter, when you're going in and having that first conversation with a young man, you have to prep them and say, hey, this is our recruiting model. Like, we want to get to know you as a person. We want to get to know your family as people and things like that. Because if you're going to jump at a school because we're going to pay you X amount of dollars, and all of a sudden now you don't like everything the program's built on, and your family has issues, you're going to be in the portal regardless anyway. So you better understand and get an understanding of the player, where he's from, what he's about, things like that. And then do people have to start talking about monetarily as a freshman? That would be adaptability, yeah. But you also have to make sure that where some of these teams are in getting into a situation of the mass exes, they're jumping the portal to get more money from their current school, is they've given so much money to these freshmen to get them on the roster, they can't afford to renegotiate with the older players. So example, somebody's going to go pay a quarterback $7 million that's never thrown in the SEC, right? They're going to give that money to him, right? Well, all of a sudden now your left guard who's making $100,000, who's an all-conference player, now he wants more, and now they're saying, well, we can't afford it. We just gave the quarterback $10 million. Who's not going to start for 2 years.
Mike, final thing on this, because I do want to get into some actual football talk for a few minutes here on the field. But what's it like in the locker room, knowing how much a guy makes and knowing if a guy makes more than you, and if a guy's started more or has more production, but maybe there's a younger guy they want to keep around and they think has more potential and they're giving him more money. I know a lot of people thought when this started there'd be big rifts in the locker room and guys unhappy that this guy's getting paid and this guy's not. Maybe the punter's not making money, but the quarterback is, obviously. But in terms of position by position and stuff, how much conversations are actually happening and how are guys, either talking amongst themselves or going to coaches or the collective and stuff? And what's that aspect like in terms of, guys making different amounts in the locker room?
Well, I think this year might be different than it was in previous years, just because the money has been each year it's getting exponentially better. Not just at Boise State, but across college football. I think at a certain point, these guys are starting to be a little more professional about it, and they're not going about, they're not walking around the locker room telling everybody how much money they're making.
Right.
If somebody really wants to find out, I think that they're going to do everything they can to, ask around and find out how much someone's getting instead of them. And it can impact somebody if they're, if that's where their headspace is at already. But if that's where they're thinking, then I already think that we got some form of problems. At least for us on the team last year, I don't think a single person in the locker room had any complaints about how much they were making versus, Ashton Genty. And he was probably making 20 times as much as anybody else on the roster last year. So I think it just comes down to a point of, guys have to be able to be, open and honest with themselves. You got to be able to flip on the tape and see what value you're actually providing to the team, and being realistic and being like, all right, I am making, for myself what I should be making at this point in my career. And I think that, as these kids got to start maturing a little bit earlier, because that's just the reality of it, is, they are turning into professionals. They're about to be employees of universities across the board. They're no longer just straight up going for a scholarship. They'll sign a contract and be a direct employee of the university. So I think at that point, I think the conversations about money are a little more controlled now, just as guys are taking a more mature approach to it and not going around flaunting their money, just like, being in a corporate space. You don't have people in a corporation going around telling people what their salaries are. You just show up and do your job.
Brad, I'll let you have the final word on this. I mean, I know you kind of got in at the end of there. You got out, at Auburn before this has gotten obviously this crazy. But in terms of NIL and having a budget and trying to pay, I mean, if you're an O-line coach and you got, 4 returning starters back and you're trying to allocate a certain number of funds, and I know it's not given by position or whatever. I know the collective's involved, but what do you make of just one guy on the, the right guard who started last year getting this much, and if he's not happy, the left guard's not happy, he's not getting this much, and how much do you think of that plays into all this?
Grow up. Grow up. Welcome to life. You guys wanted this. Hate to tell you this, but the left tackle in the National Football League's making a whole buttload more than the right guard. I mean, grow up. And if you don't like where you're at, play better. And then you're going to be in a position where Boise State will pay you more. Or you can dip your toe and then get Heisman'd and have to come back. But grow up. It's like it's anywhere else in life. Go to the corporate world. The guy sitting in a cubicle is making $100,000. The left cubicle is a new hire. He's making $175,000. Everybody watching has somebody that doesn't think they deserve, but they're making more money than them, and they're pissed, right? So you have a choice in life. Either you can do better at your job, okay, and get more money, or you know what? Leave. Because those are going to kill your locker room just as fast as anything else. The other thing is about National Football League locker room, they joke about how much everybody's making. Oh, you can afford this, you can afford that, right? It's a joke. So in college football, I mean, we put that to bed real quick on Auburn. And there were some guys making, well over $1 million. You don't talk about how much money you have. You don't talk about it. You play the game of football and you be a good teammate. And also being a good teammate is if you guys are going to dinner, if you're making the most, pick up the bill. That's the way it goes. I would actually literally, and I told the tight ends, I was like, grow up. If you're whining about it, do better, play better. I'll coach you better. Grow up. Welcome to monetary life.
Well, I think it was well said, both of you guys there. We have about 10 minutes left. I do want to try to touch on a few on-field topics here. Special teams, one area I want to go, but we got 30-second timeout. I want to thank our sponsors. We're back in 30 seconds here on Bronco Nation News.
Bronco Nation News is presented by our title sponsor, RovePaint.com. Our major sponsors, Idaho Central Credit Union, Taco Bell, Lithia Ford, the Blue and Orange Store, Jackson's, and our contributing sponsors, Signature Roofing, Western Collective, Snake River Pool and Spa, Transportation Compliance Service, Boucher Real Estate, Ridley's Family Markets, Circa Las Vegas, Lean Feast, and Timberstone Golf Course.
All right, special teams. I want to start there. We're talking to Stacy Collins, and Mike, I know you were on a couple of the special teams units last year, and overall, Stacy Collins got a pretty big paycheck to come in and try to fix the special teams, and he was a guy, at the time, Brad too, that Stacy Collins got the highest assistant coaching salary ever for a non-coordinator in terms of offense or defense to come in here, to leave Penn State, to come back, and they were really trying to fix these special teams units, and I hate to say it, but for the most part, a lot of them didn't live up to expectations. I mean, you look at the Oregon game, as you said earlier, Brad. I mean, that literally cost Boise State a game, probably on the 2 return touchdowns against Oregon, and we know what that turned out to be. And some of the other numbers, the field goal percentage, the punt percentage, went down as well. Here's first just a clip from Stacy Collins, generically special teams, where it needs to improve, and then I want to get your guys' thoughts.
tackling and leverage in space. When you talk about the two units, the kickoff and the punt units, those you got to be able to put people down in space. And there's multiple factors that go into it. It starts with the kicker, the punt, the direction, the hang, and on all of those phases. It's certainly, you got to have the protection phase with it also when you're talking punt, but it's the coverage and finish phase. We've got to be better in that area. You cannot give up explosive plays in that part of the game. We want to be 90% when we're in our pin punt situations, putting the ball inside the 10. We were about 70, so you're talking some major field position areas that we need to clean up there. When you watch the return game, you look at the kick return game, there's some things out there that are really good. But then when you put the ball on the ground, I don't care what you're doing, that's a problem. We've got to get that cleaned up. And we got to be more explosive in the punt return game. I think, sometimes that's another stat at times too. You certainly want to have, but you got to catch everything. It starts with that. There's as much said at catching than letting the ball roll 20 yards, right? There's the hidden yardage. So you got to make sure you're catching everything, not allowed to go out. But we want to get that first down. I mean, we want to average getting that first down for our offense right there. So those are all areas. And we got to be higher field goal percentage. We want to be up in that 85% off of that, and we were not that last year. So all those areas are areas that we've looked to improve.
Mike, being a guy that's been in those special teams meeting rooms with Stacy Collins, what do you make of some of the struggles last year and the knowing the guys coming back? And it sounds like they're putting more practice time on special teams this spring. Knowing Stacy Collins, what's just your big picture thought on special teams going into this year too?
Yeah, Coach Collins is I can't put it lightly with him. He is lights out special teams coordinator, and that's a general consensus across everyone I've talked to about Coach Collins. He's very good. He does a great job of bringing a ton of energy and excitement to special teams. I think a big part about special teams is you want the left up back on kickoff return to be just as fired up about doing his job. It's a tough job as he is, on either offense or defense. And you want to take the same preparation they take going into, a game plan for offense and defense as they do in special teams. I think a big factor with special teams comes down to, you got to have your best guys on the field. I mean, yes, there is however many people there are on a roster, 85 to 90, whatever that turns into. And sometimes guys, can carve out a role and get an opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to see a big trend starting this year of, truly the best guys on the roster being on special teams. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about Oregon, you look at the guys that were out there on special teams for Oregon, you had their guys that were making well over six figures, maybe some creeping towards the seven figures, because you're paying them all that money. You can look at them and say, you're going to play special teams for us. You will have a role on special teams, whether that's a core four player or just on one to fill a need at a certain point. And I think at this point, as we, are transitioning from the NIL conversation, I think as these guys continue to get paid, hey, we're paying you to do a job. Part of your job is going to be special teams, and you are making the money that you are because you provide value in every aspect of the game, and you will be an impact guy on special teams for us. And I've also seen guys, that are starters that weren't originally on special teams that have gone into those meetings and been like, I want on the field. How do I get on the field? And, next week, they're a core four guy and they're on punt return, kickoff, and kickoff return. And those guys are invaluable to special teams. Those are the guys that make it tick. And once that started to happen last year, that's when you started to see the turnaround with our special teams units. But obviously early in the year, we had some, strong hiccups on special teams that ended up negatively impacting us for the rest of the year. And I think this year, you're going to see a drastic improvement in that department.
Brad, what stands out to you about special teams? I know there was some talk, the return game, obviously giving up the returns against Oregon, and those didn't rank very well. The kick return was okay. Kick return for Boise State was actually 34th, but because they did have the touchdown that averaged that out. But I think punt return, they finished 120th. Didn't even really return a lot of punts last year. And then on the punting itself, James Ferguson Reynolds, you heard, Collins talking about field position there. He led the nation in punting 2 years ago and they were number one in net punting. That dropped down to like 41st last year, and they lost basically 6 yards a punt net punting average from 2 years ago to last year. Just big picture special teams. I know it's such a big part of the game at a school like Boise State. But overall, a lot of the numbers were not great last year.
No, you got to win the hidden yardage battle, and you can go back to the punt. Oregon. It is what it is. He's 100% right. You get those kind of athletes in space and don't have laying integrity after protection, you're going to have those things happen. I appreciate the fact of the honesty of, quite honestly, the interview and understanding this is where we were at last year. This is where the field goal thing, it's not like a ton were blocked, right? I don't know the pressure system. Sometimes Dallas just mishit the ball, missed it. I mean, it's hard for me to blame Stacy for that, to be quite honest with you. It's not like, he's a really good kicker. He just missed it. The kickoff return, you're like, it's fine. The punt is what it is. If their punt return is a lot of fair catches and things like that, it's a situation of, okay, is the punter mishitting the ball? Is directional punting? Is he not putting it where he needs to be put? If you're trying to punt it in the right corner, your release is the punt's got to be in the right corner. It can't all of a sudden be in the middle of the field. Now everybody's going to have to redirect the lane, and it's something I 100% agree with him. It's just something that's going to improve, and I agree with Mike. It's going to improve. I believe in Stacy. I think he's a hell of a football coach. I love the fact he's obviously studied it a lot, and he knows a lot of people, and he'll get it fixed. But it's just one of those things. It better get fixed.
Here's Stacey Collins on who the top special teams players have been so far in camp.
Well, Buck's been one that stands out in everything that he does over and over, which is not a surprise. He does the same thing in safety. But two guys that have consistently put in good work are Dylan Riley and Cam Bates on the offensive side. Bowen Phelps, Clay Martineau, you're seeing that a lot on the defensive side. Cole Miller's flashed amount. So there's been good competition. We spent a little bit more time in the spring on fundamentals and techniques. Get a little bit of scheme, did a little bit of scheme in the scrimmage, but I would say in those realms, Jake Ripp is another guy that is consistent with what you're seeing from a special team standpoint.
And I know, guys, Malik Sherrod is a guy coming in from Fresno State. They brought in as a transfer, and I know running back is obviously his main position, but kick return and punt return both, Brad, is a reason that they really brought him in, and we're excited about him, and obviously had a 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown against Boise State 2 years ago, and they saw very firsthand what he could do there. But I know in terms of some of the return games, punt and kick, they're hoping that the Fresno transfer Malik Sherrod will provide a big impact there.
I like him from what I've seen. I like him. He's got some shiftiness to him. He's going to be a good return. He's a good running back. I also love the fact of what he said there is they focused a lot of the fundamentals rather than the scheme. The scheme is the scheme. But if you can't fundamentally operate within the scheme, there's no reason to even have a scheme, right? And so you have to understand the breakdowns probably happen through the course of the years because of lack of or breakdown of fundamentals by a certain player or a certain position, to be quite honest with you, right? If your L3 in kickoff is not staying within the lane and keeping leverage and things like that, he's going to give up big returns. And if you don't understand that through your fundamental of how you're going to defeat the block and how you're going to defeat and keep leverage and understand leverage, it doesn't matter on the scheme. I'm a sole believer of that. And if the punt never gets off and you don't have the fundamental of blocking, especially within that shield, what's the point? Just go for it on fourth down every time. You're going to give up a buttload of returns anyway. You know what I mean? And so the fundamentals of that is so important. And that's really the lost thing in this thing is that there's a lot of fundamentals that are involved in special teams, a lot of fundamentals. And I like the fact that they've gone back to the fundamentals of special teams, and because that could have been the issue through the course of the mishaps of the year. And so if you don't get those worked out and don't address those, and you can only address some of those things in pads. You can't do it on air. You can't do it without shoulder pads. You have to have a physical aspect of that.
Mike, for you, was there one special teams unit last year that was the most disappointing, that really struggled, or is there one that you think should be much better this year? Or
I honestly think both kickoff return and punt return are going to get a massive jolt coming into this season. I know kickoff return, we had the we had the Dylan Riley return last year that was obviously electric. But I know I don't know what the stats were on that, but I think we were good. We were in a good spot on kickoff return. Punt return needs to improve and will improve. And I think that starts with Malik Sherrod. I'm also a big Malik Sherrod guy. That dude is a freaking killer from what I understand and from what I've experienced firsthand. That squib kick for 95 yards at Fresno State 2 years ago was maybe the biggest dagger I've ever felt in college football. And that dude did it. The entire game was up in our grill. And I'm freaking pumped that he's on our roster because we need guys like that, to be honest with you, with that mentality. So I do think that, this spring, it was really important across the board to get back to the fundamentals. I was in all those practices and meetings last year. I didn't have a big role on special teams by any means, but I still hold special teams to a high value just from my experience in my earlier playing career. And, I think that, we got to get back to the fundamentals. We got to get these kids back to being able to do the small details that kind of get lost when you get into a game plan setting and, you're in the middle of season and every day you're consumed by it. I think that it was easy for some guys to get lost in that, and they got to get back to that, and they got to dial in their fundamentals to get ready to go for a full 14-game season.
Well, you said that might have been a big dagger for you guys in that game. That might have been the Andy Avalos dagger too, just to throw it out there. That return, that game ended up being a game that certainly led to some events that happened over the next couple of weeks. But Brad, final thing for you. I mentioned at the beginning, we'll kind of circle back. I mean, we're 10 days from the spring game here. I think 4 or 5 practices left. You do have scrimmage 2 coming up on Saturday. What's kind of left on the objective sheet here for coaches when you're getting towards the end here, but you're not there yet? I mean, scrimmage 2 is probably more important than the spring game, I would assume, for a lot of reasons. But what's here on a practice tomorrow, and then the scrimmage 2 on Saturday, and then the Tuesday, Thursday before the spring game Saturday. What's kind of the big picture in terms of, from a coaching perspective, what you're trying to get out of this last week and a half here?
Well, I think first thing, you're in a position now, depending on where they're at install-wise, to start moving some players around. Okay, take your left guard, put them at right guard, flop. See what guys can play multiple positions along the offensive line. Test your young guys with a starting group, right? I mean, you're going to see some maintenance days. You guys, you said it, but you got to test your guys versus your starting group to see how they do. Some of your wide receivers that have really stood out that that can create mismatches, move them around. Are they going to be versatile? Can your Z go inside to H and match up on a safety? Things like that. And when you get into some service periods, or if they're in that right now, go back, and if you're having a blitz pickup, trigger your top 4 blitzes that you saw all year that caused problems and start and work on it, because it's a mimic game. They're going to see it that first week. Then remember, that whole season's broken down for week 1 opponent. So they're going to mimic whatever hurt them, either protections in the run game, coverages, did they roll, things like that. Defensively, it's just going back to core fundamentals and taking advantage of opportunities when you're allowed to tackle. So you can never, the lost thing in this whole thing about spring ball is you just don't tackle very much. And if you look at this, you don't tackle very much in fall camp, and you look at the first season, 4 games, tackling sucks. It's the way it is. And so you have to take advantage of the tackling situations. And I know you're doing your tackling circuits. I get all that stuff. But it's a little different when that running back's, you're one-on-one in space, and that safety's better make the play or it's going. So take advantage of your tackling opportunities. And then, I'd like to see some young guys go against some big offensive linemen, see if they could penetrate and hold the point, and get your linebackers to fit run right, and especially your young guys. See what they got. Because you're going to see what they got in fall camp, and then decisions have to be made.
Mike, by the way, don't know if you saw this or not, but they are switching the sideline in 2025. You guys, Boise State's going to take the other sideline in 2025 in due part to the construction and some of the things going on. But now the opposing team will get to deal with the student section. What do you make of that?
Big fan of that. I know that's had an impact on the road, certain schools. One school that definitely stands out is Colorado State. I'm not saying that our student section should emulate Colorado State student section by any means, because
They suck.
they got problems over there.
I've heard stories about Fresno, Reno. I mean, I heard there's a lot of great stories with opposing fans.
There's great stories, and then there's Colorado State. Colorado State has freaking issues in that student section, and it's been the same way since 2019 when I was a freaking red shirt on the sideline, just getting cussed out by a fan, screaming I'm a water boy or whatever. The last time we were out there, it got freaking hairy with those fans, and I know that it got brought up through the ranks about what was going on with those students, but I know the way that our fans are going to handle it. It's going to be a freaking. I know that I was seeing it a little bit on it. Some people are a little frustrated that, we're moving our sidelines or whatever. I think that our student section is going to freaking embrace the opportunity to get after a team because they're on you, dude. Like, I remember playing, like, if I knew somebody in the stands and I knew that they're going to be the student section, I could just look back from my chair on the sideline and see whoever I wanted to see and talk with them. Like, I could literally, like, have a conversation with them because they were that freaking all up on you. So I enjoy it for the student section. I think they're going to have a blast with it. I think for the guys, I'm surprised that I'm honestly a little surprised it took so long to get over to that sideline. I always felt like that would have been, I always thought that we should have been on that sideline when I was playing. I think that just made the most sense to me. That's going to be a big impact on if we have any D games this year. Haven't seen any of the schedules, but coach knows. That sun on that side of the field in the middle of a September game that's kicking off at 10 a.m. and gets to noon. At that point, you're freaking boiling.
The UCF game. I remember the UCF game, right?
Yeah. UCF game, freaking boiling on that sideline. Last 2 years ago, when we played the FCS school, kicked off at 10, come back out at halftime. We're on that sideline. It's freaking it's not, I'm not trying to say that it's like going down to Georgia Southern and having to play in Statesboro. That's a different beast on its own. But I think, it's going to be a little bit of an advantage over these away teams that got to be sitting out there freaking cooking on the blue turf that it's probably 15 degrees hotter on the turf than it is outside. And they have to deal with our student section. And I don't know. I'm a big fan of switching the sidelines.
And Brad, maybe this is a discussion for next week because we're already over the time here, but you have the whole construction going on, so there's going to be no north end zone seating during the season. We mentioned switching the sidelines here. It's going to be a different kind of unique atmosphere, unique season here on the Blue.
Yeah, it will be, which I think it's a show of progress, so who cares? Rely on the rest of the fans to make it loud. You go to overtime, don't take that end zone. You're in good shape. I don't. I'd rather take the sacrifice in the advancement of the stadium and the upgrades, and then deal with it 1 year. Yeah. I do feel bad for the people that were in those stands and have season tickets. I don't know what happens with that. I've never known what happens with that. I feel bad for them. So you get that. I really like Jeremiah Dickey will get that worked out. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be loud. They're still going to be passionate. And it's just going to be an eyesore for a season.
Yeah, I was thinking back to, I don't think you were on staff, Brad, but the Oregon State year a couple years ago, Mike, where the whole sideline, they had their whole side of the field that was just gone. And that had to have sucked for them for that season to have literally like a third of their stadium, just a whole sideline with not a single fan. But now you look at it and their side, it's beautiful. And so I could see that coming at some point to the east side of the stadium here or whatever, if you have to kind of piece this together piece by piece. But when it's all done, certainly at North End Zone project and stuff in 2026 is going to be worth having here. So
how those upgrades work out for them?
That's a Pac-12 program there, Brad. Come on.
Significant amount of debt.
Pac-12 program.
Yeah, you're right. They are. I apologize. I didn't mean to misspeak.
They're going to become one of Boise State's probably bigger rivals, I would assume now, playing every year in the Pac-12 maybe, and you're not buying it.
Their ass every year.
Man.
Yeah, hold on. That's a whole nother conversation. Come on, Memphis.
Let's save that for next week. Maybe that's a post-spring game I agree with Memphis. I still would take UNLV personally. I wouldn't.
There's no doubt.
Oh,
Let's table that for maybe the week after the spring game or 2 weeks after or something. But appreciate.
I heard Florida State's going to jump in.
April 1st.
I don't know. Get everybody all feathered up around here.
Brad's on the Coors Light a little early here on a Wednesday morning, I guess. But
not true.
Hey, appreciate both of you guys for jumping on. I know we're looking to maybe do something pre-game for the spring game. It's supposed to be nice weather, and maybe we can get something down at the James out on the patio and get you guys to stop by and maybe preview the spring game, tell some stories and stuff, have some fun. But we'll do this again next Wednesday too and get ready for the spring game. But appreciate both of you guys for jumping on. Appreciate your perspective, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Appreciate it.
By the way, we do have Riley and Rid tonight. That'll be at 8 o'clock at the James. Anybody that wants to come on by the James, 8 o'clock, Riley and Rid will be down there live. And at 7 o'clock before that, we'll have the final episode of the Tyson Degenhart show. He will be at the James as well. So we're going to do Tyson Degenhart show at the James from 7 to 8, and then Riley and Rid from 8 to 9, or sometimes when they get going, 9:30, 10. And we'll have special guests for football and basketball, I believe, for both those shows. So if you want to come hang out, have some great food at the James with appreciate Barry and everybody down there, and have a couple cold ones, and we'll be out on the patio. We'll have the speaker going so you can hear the shows and everything, and it should be a fun evening tonight at the James. 7 o'clock for Tyson Degenhart's show, 8 o'clock for Riley and Rid. So hope folks will come join us down there for that. And these two gentlemen will be back next Wednesday. We'll get you ready for the spring game. And I'll be back with Johnny Mallory 9 a.m. tomorrow as well. But appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tonight at the James, 7 o'clock. We'll be live on YouTube. If you can't make it, you can watch the show from anywhere in the world. And we'll talk to you guys later. Bronco Nation News Live, BroncoNationNews.com.
Bronco Nation News is presented by our title sponsor, RovePaint.com. Our major sponsors, Idaho Central Credit Union, Taco Bell, Lithia Ford, The Blue and Orange Store, Jackson's, and our contributing sponsors, Signature Roofing, Western Collective, Snake River Pool and Spa, Transportation Compliance Service, Boucher Real Estate, Ridley's Family Markets, Circa Las Vegas, Lean Feast, and Timberstone Golf Course.